The moment my brother stood up at the dinner table, I felt the room shift. It was Thanksgiving. The table was crowded with plates of food, half-finished conversations, and relatives we only saw once a year. My aunt was telling one of her usual long stories when my brother suddenly tapped his glass with a spoon. Clink, clink. Everyone looked up. "I've got something important to share," he said with a confident smile. People laughed at first, assuming it was a joke or some kind of holiday toast. But then he pulled a folded envelope from his jacket pocket and held it up. "My parents asked me to tell everyone tonight." The room went quiet. He unfolded the paper slowly, like he was about to announce a big award. "As of this week," he said, glancing around the table, "Mom and Dad have officially transferred the house, the land, and most of their savings to me." For a moment, nobody spoke. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Then my cousin frowned. "Wait, what about your sibling?" My brother shrugged, casually, like the answer was obvious. "Well," he said, tilting his head toward me, "they never really helped the family much anyway." A few awkward laughs slipped out around the table. Someone coughed. My mother stared down at her plate, quietly moving peas around with her fork. My father cleared his throat, but didn't say a word. That silence said more than anything else could have. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a misunderstanding. They had already decided. My brother leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying the attention. "I've always been the responsible one," he continued. "So it just makes sense." Someone across the table turned to me. "What do you think about all this?" Suddenly, every eye in the room was on me, waiting, expecting anger, or maybe a fight. But I didn't give them either. I just sat there for a moment, letting the quiet settle. Then I slowly placed my napkin on the table and stood up. The chair slid softly against the floor. "I see," I said calmly. My brother smirked like he'd just proven a point. Maybe he thought I was embarrassed. Maybe he thought I was weak. But in that moment, something inside me became very clear. Not about money, not about the house, about people, about who they really are when they think no one is watching. I picked up my coat from the back of the chair and walked toward the door. No shouting, no arguments, just silence. Behind me, the conversation slowly started again, like nothing had happened. They thought they had already decided my place in the family. They had no idea what I was about to do next. I didn't go back to the table that night. The cold air outside felt quieter than the house ever had. For a while, I just stood there in the dark driveway, thinking about everything that had happened. Not the money, not the house, but the silence. My parents hadn't defended me. My brother hadn't hesitated. And the rest of the family had simply watched. That night, something in me changed. I stopped trying to prove myself to people who had already decided who I was. Instead, I decided to focus on something else. My own life. The weeks after Thanksgiving were strangely peaceful. No calls. No messages from my brother. My parents sent a short text once or twice, asking if I was okay, but it felt more like an obligation than concern. So I stopped waiting for them. I poured my time into work. Long hours, quiet nights, learning things I had always wanted to learn but never had the time for. Slowly, opportunities started appearing where I hadn't noticed them before. Projects turned into promotions. Promotions turned into bigger responsibilities. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was actually building something. Not for approval, not for applause, just for myself. Meanwhile, news from my family still reached me now and then through relatives. Apparently, my brother loved telling people about his big announcement. At gatherings, he'd joke about how he was now the one holding the family together. But things weren't as smooth as he made them sound. Managing the house wasn't easy. Property taxes were higher than expected. Repairs started piling up. My parents began arguing more about money. The house that had once looked like a prize slowly became a responsibility. But I stayed out of it. I didn't argue. I didn't correct anyone. If someone asked about Thanksgiving, I simply smiled and changed the subject. Months passed like that. Then, one evening, while finishing work late, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. The voice on the other end was calm and professional. "Hello," the man said. "I believe you're part of the Anderson family?" I paused. "Yes," I replied carefully. "Good," he said. "There's something important regarding your parents' estate that we need to discuss." For the first time since Thanksgiving, I felt that quiet feeling again. The one that told me something bigger was happening behind the scenes. Something my brother clearly didn't know about. And for the first time in months, I realized something else. They were still talking about me, but my story with them wasn't finished yet. 2 weeks later, the whole family gathered again at the house. This time it wasn't for a holiday. It was for a meeting. My brother sat at the head of the table like he owned the place, greeting everyone with the same confident smile he had on Thanksgiving night. My parents looked nervous, whispering to each other while relatives filled the chairs. Then the front door opened. A man in a suit walked in and introduced himself as my parents' estate attorney. And behind him, I stepped inside. The room went silent. My brother frowned the moment he saw me. "What are you doing here?" he asked. The lawyer calmly placed a thick folder on the table. "Your parents asked me to clarify something about the property transfer," he said. Everyone leaned forward. "The house and land were transferred to your brother for management purposes only. However, according to the original estate documents, the primary beneficiary of the family assets is actually—" He looked down at the page. "Both children equally." My brother's confident smile disappeared. "What?" he snapped. The lawyer continued calmly, explaining that the transfer had never meant ownership. It was simply temporary management, while the full estate plan remained unchanged. In other words, nothing had ever belonged to him alone. The room was completely quiet now. My brother stared at the papers, speechless. Finally, someone looked at me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I simply said, "Next time, make sure you understand the whole story before announcing the ending." Then I picked up my coat. Because the truth is, I hadn't come back to fight. I had simply come back to remind them of something. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's preparation. No one tried to stop me as I walked toward the door. My brother was still staring at the papers, his confidence completely gone. The room that once laughed at me was now painfully quiet. Outside, the cold air felt calm again. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel victorious either. Just clear. Because some people think power comes from speaking the loudest. But the truth is much simpler. The loud ones talk. The quiet ones build. And by the time the truth appears, it's already too late to change it.